Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Dokkan Battle video. This is your boy Jumbo Shark 19, and this time we're doing something a little different. That's right, we're doing a little bit of a discussion video on private servers. Okay, so this is a very hot topic in the community. It seems to always get brought up here and there. That being said, I think the past few weeks, maybe even, I don't even, time goes by so fast, but like, it definitely feels like the past few weeks, maybe even a couple months, the discussion has died down. It seemed like everyone was kind of just letting each other be after like toxic discussions. Because let's be honest, a lot of times these discussions about private servers just ends up in pure toxicity. It ends up in a sense where people just fling stuff at each other. You have people that are on one side that really dislike the other side, and then it just ends up becoming a mud flinging contest. And at the end of the day, the discussion breaks down, and there's no conversation to actually be had. I want to kind of change that a little bit. I want to kind of take a stab at it. I want to look at some reactions, and I want to go over some of the pros and cons, and just kind of come at it from like a neutral view. Because at the end of the day, my personal view is this: I don't use private servers. I've never had a desire to use private servers. I don't ever plan on using private servers, but I see a place for them, and I don't have this vitriol and just pure hate against them either. So I feel like I'm in a pretty good position to maybe talk about it. Now, that being said, I'm a small account. I'm just starting out. I only have 200 followers on Twitter. I only have 20 something subscribers here on YouTube. So I don't have a full picture. And then also, since I don't have experience with the private server, that does come into play. It's good to have experience, right? But that being said, I did want to take a stab at it. I wanted to share some of my thoughts and the thoughts of the community. So what I want to start off is what kind of kicked all this discussion about private servers off again. And it didn't get too bad, didn't get too out of hand. But basically, Deku Gogeta Solos here on Twitter posted this video. He talks about how he probably should have grabbed 7 orbs. Broly Trio sucks. Now, I'm not going to play the video. If you want to see it, here you go. You got the URL up at the top. But basically, what ends up happening is that he foregoes getting the 7 orbs. So you can see right here. All right, so Deku, he grabs all these yellow orbs with Broly. He goes. All right, so then he doesn't grab he uses the other orbs, just a couple of the orbs for the Broly trio. 3 strength orbs. All right, and that led him to unfortunately dying. Broly trio didn't dodge. Let's see, let's get to the point where, there's a lot of attacks. All right, more Broly. All right, so then it's the Broly trio. So they're not going to finish him off because obviously this phase has a 15 million baseline. You have to do at least 15 million damage. Okay, so Deku dies. He says Broly Trio sucks. Now, first things first, I don't think he actually thinks, maybe I'm wrong. It's possible I'm wrong here. I don't think he actually thinks they suck. I think it was just more of a joke. But this led into another post where he talks about people aren't getting the point. Then Truth chimes in. Seems to always be the center of a lot of this, but it makes sense. He's like, wait, getting to what point? And Deku's like, the final boss phase. I promise this shit is not easy. And then that's when Truth comes in with, this is just a private server, dude. Private server means nothing. Like, that's what he's trying to say here. And then I come in at the end and I said, oh man, please do not go back doing, it was better when she dropped it, which I do agree. And yet, even though I'm now participating in it right now, I'm making my own video on the subject. Now, before we get really deep into the discussion of private servers, I want to defend Deku a little bit here. Besides the fact that I'm pretty sure he was just joking around, I really something I think that got missed in the video is a lot of people were attacking him, saying like, why didn't you grab the 7 orbs? Why didn't you grab the 7 orbs? Like, this person said, extra damage and losing, dodging and winning, etc., etc. Vector, you need to be studied. Lord Minato, never just assume something, right? JJD saying, expecting a type disadvantage unit to get, to finish him off was foolish. But like Deku says, when did he say that? His whole idea here was that he was trying to get as much attack support as possible because he really thought Broly was going to finish it off. And if you watch the video, Broly comes very close to finishing it off. It honestly wasn't a bad strategy. And then as the next rotation was going to be anyway, Deku says, he thought it was dead anyway because the next turn. So I kind of understand in the context of it, this really isn't that bad of a clip. Like, this isn't really that bad of a video. It's nothing to lose your mind over. But alas, here I am. I'm doing a video on private servers. Here everyone else is. So let's just talk about it. Let's get into it. Okay. So I quoted Truth and I said, "Can we as a community just not do this again? The private server discourse always ends up toxic. Just let people play how they want to play." Which is a big thing for me. I'm a really big believer in that. Just let people play how they want to play. The peace has been nice the past few months, and I really do mean that. Like, the thing is like the private server discussion, and I realize the irony in this as I'm making a video on it, but I'm trying to be different about it because I feel like most of the discussions always ends up toxic, like I said earlier, and it just ends up with people just firmly holding their stance and not moving. And I do think there are some things to talk about. I really think there are some pros and there are some cons, and there can be a really interesting discussion to be had. But like, people just need to calm down. Remember, it's just the internet. Remember, it's just a video game. Like, at the end of the day, it's just a video game, and that people don't, just chill out a little bit. Like, no one has to be mean. I'm not a perfect person. I misread messages all the time. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but at the same time, I do feel like just a little bit more kindness would go a long way. Just a little bit more understanding. Just a little bit more willing to be calm and discuss this. Okay, so I'm like, can we just not do this again? Because every time we go launch into these private server discussions, it gets toxic. Well, Truth replied to me. All right, and he was, very respectful for the most part. I mean, overall, right? He says, no, stop. Play how you play is fine when you're actually playing the real game, not the fake shit run by clowns that is taking active players away from the actual game. Now, let's break this down because there are actually a lot of elements in this argument that Truth is making. So, Truth is making the argument that, listen, he's like, listen, I don't care how people actually play Dokkan. Okay, fair enough. As long as they're playing the real game. So in his mind, the real game is the one you download from the App Store, right? It's not a private server. I think we kind of all understand that. Um, Now, there's a couple issues here which I think he has. One is not the fake stuff run by clowns. Now, the reason he's calling some of these people clowns is there has been a very, what should I put? I'm not even that in tune with it myself since I don't really get involved with private servers. But even from what I know and have seen over the years, there is a little bit of, there are a lot of issues with people that run some of these servers, and that has caused a lot of drama. Now, I'm not going to get into it. There are other people that have made videos or have brought it up. What those issues are? But just to put it bluntly, a lot of the people that have run these private servers have been creeps. Either they've been, it is what it is, right? Now, I'm not saying everyone. No, please do not get offended. I'm not saying everyone's a creep that runs a private server. That's not it at all. But there have been some bad apples. There have been some bad people that have really made people sour against private servers for nothing other than who these people were that running it. And I think that is a legitimate reason. I think staying away from negative, toxic people can be a good thing, especially with what some of those people were accused of doing, right? Like, like I said, I don't want to get into it, but there were like some perverts, right? So it's one of those things that it makes sense to why you'd have a negative reaction to that. Listen, I don't like private servers because the people that tend to run them are not good people. That's a strong argument in and of itself. It really is. And then Truth makes the other argument. He says he's taking active players away from the actual game. And I actually think this is a really, really good discussion that could be had because my argument would be that the people that play private servers weren't going to play the real game anyway. Now, we're going to get into why people play private servers in just a second. But the main idea here is that you don't want to take active players away from the game because you want the game to succeed. You want the game to make money. But as we know, Akatsuki, Bandai, a lot of these developers, they make a lot of money. And again, I don't know, I don't have evidence either way, but my like intuition is just telling me like, I really don't think the people that are playing private servers to begin with play the real game anyway, or at least a small percentage of them do, maybe. Right? Like, I believe Deku said in his post, he ran out of attempt limits. So he went to the private server because he didn't want to stop playing a game. And that's a really good reason, right? So Truth's making a couple arguments here, and I think they are strong arguments. I think they are. I think they're legitimate arguments, and it makes sense. And especially Truth, like, Truth is just very passionate. He loves Dokkan. He loves Dragon Ball, but like he loves Dokkan. All right, he loves the game. He loves the community. He loves everything around it. And there's just been a lot of negativity towards the private servers, like in that community. And so I think it's just really turned him against it. And I think how people react and end up in these conversations, people say mean things. I've seen people say very mean things to Truth, and I've seen Truth give it right back, right? But I think it just devolves into this toxicity. So Truth is always kind of in this mode of like defensive and just like private servers need to die. And I don't blame him, right? But I came back with, everything's been fine for weeks now. All of a sudden, you got to bug up your butt about private servers again for no reason. Shake my head because again, I don't think Deku's video, his original video, like I don't think private server has anything to do with what he was showing there. Like he just got unlucky, right? Like he tried to get the attack support, it didn't work out, and he ended up dying. He could have got a 50% chance to dodge, but he didn't dodge. It is what it is. It happens. Broly trios died for me too, and then it kind of just got blown up out of proportion, right? So then Truth comes back and he says, okay, man, which I think he thought I was kind of going after him a little bit, which if you're watching this video, Truth, which I'm sure you're not, but just in case you are, I really wasn't. Like, I wasn't trying to be aggressive in any way, right? I was just saying it's just like, oh, man, here we go again. Like, this discussion never leads anywhere. But he's like, okay, man, nothing about the private server is good. It's just a black stain for the game. Bandai's dragging their feet. They're allowing it to run wild. I actually care about the game. And now I don't like this part because it kind of insinuates that people that like private servers don't care about the game. And even though like I'm neutral, like I don't feel like it's fair to say like I don't care about the game because I've spent too much money. I've easily spent a couple $1,000s on the game myself, and I think that's a big problem. That's why I'm kind of a supporter of private servers because it's basically gambling, right? Gotcha games are gambling. You're gambling. You don't know. You're not guaranteed to get anything. All right. So I'm a little, it's a little. I feel like a little dismissive that reply because that's not what I was getting at all. And I do think there is a good discussion to be had. Okay, so let's get into a little bit more, right? So we have Goo here, Goo Fury. He's like Truth said, right? Truth brought it up, and then Goo brings it up here. He says, I wonder why they haven't made a play to get this stuff taken down yet. And Goo, you and Truth make a great point. When you really think about it, when you look at it just from an outsider's perspective, at the end of the day, private servers are taking money away from Dokkan. It gives players a chance to play with all the units without the gotcha element, right? The whole point of Dokkan Battle, I'm sorry to say it, is to get you to spend money. And private servers take away that. So there is a good reason, there is good incentive for Akatsuki and the developers and Bandai, what have you, to go after, but they haven't. They have not gone after the private servers. They've made threats here and there, but like with what was it called when they were safety net, right? They were gonna go with safety net. That was gonna be a big scary thing, and then it ended up not. It ended up not being a big deal. And then even then, I was reading at the time, people said that safety net had been implemented in other gotcha games, and people got around it, no problem. So even then, even if it was enacted, it wasn't going to be a big deal. But my theory is that the reason Bandai or Akatsuki, whoever's in charge, whoever has the power to go after the private servers, the lawyers, right? My reasoning, I believe, is that because it's probably just not enough people, it's not enough time and money to worth fighting it. It's probably such a minuscule amount of people actually using private servers, and Akatsuki's making so much money still that it just doesn't justify the possible negative publicity, which it would be, right? There are people that are fans of private servers that would upset them, but probably a very small drop in the pond. Let's be real. But at the same time, it's just not worth. I just think it's not worth it for them. It's not worth it for Akatsuki to shut it down. In a way, it's kind of free advertising, but I just think it's such a small percentage of players using it. And that kind of leads into a different argument. If it's such a small percentage of players using the private server, again, I don't have data. I don't have numbers. Maybe it's a lot more than I think. Maybe it's millions of players. I don't know. But the way I look at it is if it is such a small, minuscule amount anyway, and Akatsuki doesn't care, then should we really care? Just let it be. Like if they don't care, they have all the power. They're the ones that are actually, directly being impacted. They're losing out on money. No matter how rich, wealthy of a company they are, they're still losing out on money. If the people directly losing out on that money don't care, why should we? That's kind of that's another point, I think. But again, good question. Why don't they do something about it? Danukum came in on Twitter. He says, the only time I've ever used private servers was when JP drops a hype unit. So I would use them for a day and then wait for them to drop on global and summon. And I think that's great, right? I think this is a problem that we're not going to have to worry about anymore because we have the sync coming, right? But this is definitely an interesting issue with the different schedules. If you have a global account like myself, I played global since year 3. I've known about the JP game and how to do that and playing the JP servers, for a few years now. But I invested so much time and money into my global account, I wasn't about to invest time and money into a JP account. Now, again, this issue has pretty much resolved itself because we're going into an age of sync. The global sync is happening. We're just gonna be on a level playing field. But even if the sync wasn't happening, I do think this is a justifiable reason. I think Danukum here has a really good point, is that it allows players to use units that they might not otherwise be able to use. But in this case, Danukum saying he's reinvesting into the game because he plays the real version and he would summon, maybe spend money, I don't know. But he's playing the real game too. So he's supporting both versions, which I think is important. I do think it's important to support the base version as well. A couple people wrote, some comments about, yet you promoted it on your channel. You used to publish content, and as you can see, I like some of these posts because I do think it's important. I mean, truth. Again, I don't know if you're watching this, probably not, but like it used to be hypocritical. But I haven't seen Truth post a private server video in a long time. So I think he's finally taken it to heart, and even he realizes, like, you know what, I am being a hypocrite when I call out private servers, but then use it for my own personal gain. I think that used to be a really big issue and why a lot of people didn't listen to what he had to say because at the end of the day, he was being hypocritical. But now he's finally practicing what he preaches, and so that's not a good argument anymore. And I don't think attacking him for it now makes a difference because he is really practicing what he preaches. He's really practicing and not using the private servers anymore himself. And I think that's a big step. I think that's a big deal. And it means more now what he says. His words mean more. When he says private servers are bad and he's not using them himself, to me, that means more. It means like, okay, he's really standing by his morals. He's standing his ground, if you will. All right. So it kind of goes into this. Mech asks, wait a minute, aren't the private servers ran by some really bad people? Why do we support them? There have been issues. I don't know what servers run by who, but I think a lot of that's been weeded out. But people are people. There's always going to be someone that messes up. Um, but yeah, that was an issue. There were some of the stories I heard were really messed up, and that is something to be made aware of. And that kind of leads into another point, right? Which is private servers charging. So I posted a thread. I asked, all right, thinking about making a video on the private server debate. Last night reinvigorated it some, and I've always wanted to give my thoughts on it. I mean, shoot, I'm already 18 minutes into this video, and I have a lot more I could say. So I have a lot of thoughts on it. Let me know how you feel in the video in the thought replies, and why you feel that way. It'll be read in an upcoming video. So while I was waiting for responses, letting people kind of get their thoughts out, again, I'm just a small account, so I didn't reach too many people. Only 134 people saw it, but I got some nice replies. I'm actually going to refresh just in case. Let's see, 10 replies. Any new ones? Okay, no worries. So I just wanted to get some thoughts from some of my followers. Now, before we get into that, I made a little chart, and I kind of want to talk about this chart for a minute. So I made a pro and con chart. It's very simple, but basically in the pros, I want to talk about the pros a little bit, and then I want to talk about the cons, and then I'm going to go back to my thread and just go over some of the responses I got here. I got some really, really good responses. So right away, these are some of the basic pros and cons I thought of on my own, which was the biggest pro for a private server is that it lets anybody play. Anybody who wants to play can. You don't have to have money. And I think that's a huge deal. I think that's a huge issue, is that there is somewhat of a barrier to play Dokkan and get the full content because I spend money. I spend money on Dokkan, and I'm still missing characters. I don't 100% them. I'm not getting the full experience as someone like Truth, who's able to rainbow every character. It's a different gaming experience, and I think that does get lost sometimes. I really do. And so that's why I really do like the idea of private servers, because it lets anybody play on an even playing field, and you don't have to spend money. There are people out there that can't. Like, I'm not trying to make it a pity party or sob story, but like, let's just be real. There are people out there in third world countries getting bombed, right? Like there are people starving, like there are people everything. So at the end of the day, right, you're like, well, if that's what they're worried about, why are they worried about Dokkan Battle? You're right. That's a good argument, but people like to escape from reality. When your life sucks, the only thing you want to do is escape from it. And games, video games such as Dokkan, allow you to escape from that, right? And I think having a way where people can play it to the full extent without having to spend money, I think that is a good thing. I really do. Now, that being said, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. If you see the second con I have says some still charge for access. Now, that's where some of this argument goes out the window because some people that do run a private server still charge. I think I saw someone charge like $25 a month, which when you think about it, a lot of people spend more than that a month on characters. So that's still probably not a bad deal, but I have issues with that. One, you're charging for access for something that you really didn't have anything to do with. Like you didn't create Dokkan, you're not creating the assets, you're not making the animations, you're not doing the voice acting, you're not creating anything, and yet you're charging for it. I think that's a huge issue. I don't like that. I think private servers, if you're going to run one, it's got to be free. It's got to be free, especially because charging for it puts a bigger target on your back. It's going to make it more likely that they shut you down, right? Every time, and we see this all the time in video games. We see this all the time in media, where piracy will kind of just it's not like these big companies aren't aware of it, but they just let it go. It's not worth fighting for them. It's a drop in the bucket. But it's as soon as someone starts charging to see these bootleg movies, charging to play these bootleg games, mods, right? We've seen it multiple times now where mods of video games start getting charged for, like Call of Duty, and then they get shut down. Or Nintendo's the biggest bad guy for mods, and a lot of times they're shutting them down once they start getting charged for it. So it's the money making process that's where it becomes a real issue. So the two cons I have right away are shady characters. I feel like we've talked about that enough now, and some still charge for access. But at the end of the day, on the pro side, it still saves you money. All right. I don't think I have to go too much into that argument because I think everyone here that plays Dokkan, even if you've never spent a dime, knows how money hungry it can be. And Dokkan is not one of the better gotchas out there in the sense of deals. It really isn't. There are a lot of other gotchas, and I've heard this from millions of people. And I say millions, I'm obviously exaggerating, but I've seen this time and time again where people say that no, 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 there are a lot of other gotchas out there that have better pity systems. There are other gotchas out there that have better summoning systems. They're not quite as greedy as Dokkan. Dokkan's a greedy game. All right, they finally implemented pity, but it's only for yellow coins. That's not good enough. I think everyone can kind of agree that the pity system still needs work. So that is the biggest thing, I think, is one of the biggest arguments is it saves money, lets everyone play. Now, another pro is that there's no artificial attempt limits. And I think this is a big one, and I think this is something that I want to say everyone kind of agrees with, is that attempt limits is just artificial difficulty. It's just a way to get you to want to log back in the next day and try after you get your butt kicked. It's a great psychological strategy. It really is. It's brilliant. It is a brilliant strategy overall. But at the same time, it's not fun. And it takes away. I want you to think about this scenario for a second. Broly and Gogeta just came out. Beast and the Gammas came out. Let's say, you spent $100. I'm going low. I'm just saying, you know what? You had $100. You love Dokkan. You spent it on the tickets and the deals because you wanted to summon for your favorite character. And you got him. You spent $100 and you got him. You spent $1,000, you got him. Maybe you spent no dollars and you got your favorite character. You don't even need to spend money. You just got him. You got lucky. You pulled him on the tickets. You pulled him on with some of the with stones from the celebration. Didn't spend a single dollar. You go into the new events that's what you want to do, right? Like, what do you do with a character once you pull them? Well, you want to use them, right? You want to go into events and you want to actively use them. But the game's ruled by RNG. Sometimes you can build a perfect team and just get destroyed. So you go into the brand new Supreme Magnificent Battle and you just get wiped out. Now you have no attempt limits left. Well, what are you gonna go do? Are you gonna go play another red zone? You could go try another red zone. Has attempt limits too, but you're probably just gonna beat it because some of the red zones are older now, so the new characters are gonna stomp it. But you could run out of attempt limits there too. At the end of the day, there is a scenario where you can run out of events to play, and all that's left is story mode, grinding, and Dokkan events. That's not fun. It's not fun getting butt blasted 5 times in a row due to bad opening rotations. I think attempt limits, when they first really introduced them with the God event, I think it was bad precedent then, and I think it's bad. I think it's still bad now. I think if they just took attempt limits away, that would end a lot of the private server discussion, because I think a lot of people that use the private server, perhaps it really seems that way anyway, that there are a lot of people that use the private server, like Deku, who said he was using it because he simply ran out of attempts on the real game. So this is one of those arguments where I think their own practice, while psychologically sound, I think, while it makes sense while they're doing it, they want engagement, they want people to keep logging in every day, they want you to be difficult, they want these events to be difficult, so you want to summon, you're incentivized to summon. But at the same time, I think it does push people away, and it does frustrate people. So I think no attempt limits is something that they should just be normal. People don't want to hop in 5 times and not be able to play anymore. 6 times if you have the bonus. I think that's a big issue, and something they're hurting themselves with attempt limits. Now, another con, and this is a very controversial one, is that it takes money away from the devs. Now, the reason this is controversial is, simply put, the devs already have a lot of money. They're already a $1 billion corporation. Or I looked up Akatsuki and they're like worth 230 million or something like that. And that might be on the low estimate. Sure, they're getting support from Bandai, etc. But it is, at the end of the day, there is no argument against it aside from, well, it's not hurting them. But it still is taking money. There is no other argument. It really is. At the end of the day, if you're playing a private server and that's all you play, if you don't support the other game at all, then you are taking money out of their pockets. But it's one of those instances where some people are going to see it as a sense of, like, it doesn't matter if they're rich already, you're still stealing from them. And then there's the other argument, like, I don't know, kind of like the Robin Hood argument of, like, who cares? You're stealing from the already rich. It's a drop in the bucket. No one cares. I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer to that, because I can see the pros and cons of both sides. I really do. I can see that, at the end of the day, they are, worth millions and millions of dollars already. 1% of the players using a private server isn't going to impact that. On the counter side, it is stealing. Like, in a way, it is. But I think this kind of goes back to the whole point of, if they don't want to shut down the servers themselves, if they're not bothered by it, if the actual people that are getting impacted by these private servers don't want to shut them down, then I think that answers the question. It's obviously not impacting them that much. But again, that's kind of just I don't have evidence for that. That's just kind of what I'm just gathering just from what I see. Making an inference. I'm making a educated guess. Or, oh, from the new Deadpool movie, what was it? He's not lying. He's making something a wish. I'm making an educated wish or something like that. Right? I'm just thinking about the possibilities. Okay. Um, Now, the last pro I have and the last con is allows more people to play. I think that kind of goes with my first one, lets anyone play, but it just allows more people to play. Because there are people in other countries, maybe they have bad internet access, or they can't afford to play. Or, like, if you're in Belgium, you can't, right? It's Belgium, I believe, right? Maybe not, no, not Belgium. Is it Belgium? There's a country where you can't buy dragon stones because they have a law, right? So this allows people to play that can't play the game. So that's my biggest argument. Cons, this is probably the biggest one, the biggest issue people have is that agendas, right? Agenda pushing. So in the discussion, there were a lot of people that talked about agenda pushing in my discussion, actually. So we're going to get into that. We're going to go to my thread now. We're going to talk about it, and we're going to get into it. So we're already a half hour in. We're 29 minutes in. If you've watched this long, I'm going to go for another maybe 10 minutes or so. We're going to talk about my thread. I appreciate it. Let me know down in the comments, you guys. Let me know in the comments. What is your opinion on private servers? Let me know how you feel. I'm really curious. Let me know. Okay. So I made this thread. So right away, Tapion, my boy Tapion. And I really love what he said to begin with, because I want to talk about this. I think this happens too often. Okay, so right away he starts off with, and again, Tapion, he's such a good friend of mine, so shout out to Tapion if you're watching this. He says, hopefully we can still be friends after this, but I dislike private servers. Now I want to talk about this for a second. There are asterisks that can be made in terms of saying what I'm about to say, which is I think losing a friendship over a minor disagreement, especially an opinion like this, is silly. Now, there are asterisks to that. I can think of a couple off the top of my head I'm not even going to bring up where I could see where having a certain view on something uh, could lead to huge disagreements and then not being friends anymore. But we're talking about a video game here, and I think a lot of people take it too seriously, and it's a shame because I have seen people get blocked and friendships ended over nothing. And I don't think anybody should get blocked or friendship ruined or anything over Dokkan or private server because at the end of the day, it's just a video game. So if there's one thing to take away from this entire video, I think it's just that like be cool, have a discussion, just keep calm, and just remember that there's a human being on the other side of the screen, and you both like enjoy the same thing. At the end of the day, people that play private servers and people that don't love Dokkan. We just love Dokkan. We love the game. Okay. So Tapion goes in. He says he doesn't like private servers because it's fake. It's not real. I grind my account day in and day out. I put in the work. I summon. I grind the medals. And he still doesn't get rainbow units. All right. He continues. He says, so it's not that, to be honest, I don't like private servers. I just don't like when private servers use to try and push agendas on certain units when those servers let you just mod the game however you want. You can make units look good. Okay? So basically, Tapion's making a couple arguments here. One of the main arguments Tapion's making is that he doesn't like how it takes away from the grind. When you play the real version of Dokkan Battle, so I'm putting real in quotation marks, but when you play the official, just say official version, right? When you play the official game, you have to put in work. People that start playing right now, like you're not going to have the medals, you're not going to have the Elder Kais, you're not going to have the orbs for hidden potential. It's going to be a grind. You're not going to have the same experience as someone that's been playing for a couple months, that's been playing for a couple years, right? Like someone like me who's been playing, let's see, we just had our 9th anniversary. So I've been playing for 5, 6, I think 6, 7 years now. 6 years. I want to say 6 years. I don't ever have to worry about Elder Kais or Awakening Medals or Zenny. Like, there are just parts of the game that don't apply to me anymore because I've been playing so long. But those are issues that some people do have, right? And the private server takes away that and makes it more even playing ground. So I can understand that argument. Again, I can see that. Like it's like taking away. It's like, listen, man, I spend money, I summon, I put in the work. I don't like that private servers take away, and that's a fine opinion. I think that's a perfectly fine opinion to have, and it's understandable. On the count side, again, I think the way some of the grind is in Dokkan isn't fun. Grinding Awakening Medals, grinding Elder Kais, some of those things just come with time. And I do think that it is kind of a little bit of an unfair advantage to start off. Like, people that just start playing the game are at such a disadvantage unless they spend thousands of dollars. So I think that's interesting. I think for newer players, it can be harder to get into, but that's part of the fun, right? The grind. Like when I reached level 999, it was it was awesome. I was over the moon. It was like finally, the grind has been completed. I beat Dokkan, right? And it felt good. You don't get that on the private server, but I don't think some people just don't care about that, and I think that's fine too. Like for me, like I can look at it and it's like, yeah, you know what? I grinded a lot, but I mean, it doesn't bother me, I guess. But I think that's a fine opinion, and I think that's just something that some people have and some people aren't going to have, and it's very understandable. But again, I think that's a legitimate view. So DBC Archie, my boy Archie, hope you're doing well, friend. He comes in and he says, I think private servers have one use. To allow content creators or players to test the new units to see how they perform and if they're worth summoning for. Dokkan should let you test units fire printing stones just like Legends does. And then he also added he personally doesn't use them. I think this is a great idea. So I played a little bit of Legends. I used to play Legends back in the day. And Legends does have a thing where you can test out the unit. Like actually use it. Not just watch a video, not just watch a preview, not watch someone else use him, not play against him. Actually use him yourself. Now it's just like a little practice mode, but you still get to see the animations, you still get to get a feel for it. I think that would be huge in Dokkan. I think if you could like take the new unit into the punching bag event or some practice mode, some nothing practice mode, but to try out the unit, I think that's something Archie's onto something there. I think that is a fantastic way. And I think that brings up a good point of private servers is to let people do early showcases. Now, the negative side to that is people would oftentimes end up underrating a unit. But I do think being able to test the unit out first before you want to buy it, trying before you buy, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't see a situation where someone is going to go try a unit out. Like, I would only think it would lead to more sales, in honesty. There might be people out there, like, let's say Topo, right? Let's say Topo's coming out next for Global, which we know. I wonder how many people have no interest in summoning for Topo, but if they had the opportunity to actually use him and just practice with him, if maybe they would change their mind and go, you know what, I'm going to throw 100 stones at Topo. I'm going to throw 50 stones. I'm going to throw one whole rotation if there's deals, right? I think that could be a lot. I really do. So I think that's a really good idea, and I think that could end up increasing profits, to be quite honest. I don't know. What say you guys? Let me know down in the comments. My boy Spider Shark, Spider-Man Shark 2 says, I'll put it as simple and effective as possible. Should they exist? No. No, no. But is it okay to use them? If you're having fun testing out units, teams you don't currently have, then yes. Is it okay to push an agenda with private servers? If it's realistic, yes. If it's unrealistic, then no. So again, we come up with this topic of agendas. So what is an agenda? Right? An agenda in this context is someone that really, really wants to prove a point. And so they get the situation of the point they want to prove, record it, and post it. Right? So people were thinking that Deku was posting that clip of the Broly trio because he has some anti-Broly trio agenda, which was not the case at all. Again, just a big misunderstanding. Um, but I've seen people give examples of, like, there are tech pan enjoyers out there, and they show her with like 99 million attack stats or something. So there are instances where the private server can manipulate how a unit looks because you're specifically picking and choosing events and maybe getting around some of the difficulties, right? Like, at the end of the day, a temp limits implement RNG. If you don't have a temp limits, you have infinite RNG, all right? It makes sense. It makes sense. But at the same time, I feel like you could kind of say the same for if you're playing the real game, the official game, and you're recording videos, you're also picking and choosing what you're showing sometimes, depending on the video, right? So biases can form either way. So I don't know. I'm not as passionate when it comes to the agenda thing because I don't see the big deal. Like, I can see how it could be annoying when it's something over and over and something that's just not true. But at the same time, you know what? It's just someone having fun. They're probably doing it on purpose anyway most of the time. They probably know that what they're saying isn't true, but they're just kind of trying to poke at people, annoy people, engagement farm, if you will. So I don't know. I don't know. It's a tough one. Agendas is a tough one because it's just something that I just personally don't I'm not passionate about. I'm not passionate about it. So I don't let it bother me too much. And you know what? I don't see a lot of it. And I think that's just because I'm a smaller account. I don't see a lot of the agenda pushing. So it's not as annoying to me because I don't see it. But if I saw it all the time, and like, listen, that's not a realistic scenario, I can see how that could be annoying. Absolutely. Okay? So we have a few more responses. We have DBC Link 2000. I hate them, just to be blunt. With them, you can put characters in unrealistic situations or situations with 100 attempts to get to. Not to mention, it's always about some character being slandered or gassed because of the no attempt limits. And I think this is another good example. I think this goes back to what I was saying about attempt limits, and I think that's why they should just be gone. Just get rid of attempt limits, and I think some of these issues just go away. Because then at the end of the day, anybody playing the official game can have those hundreds and hundreds of attempts too, right? The attempt limits, I just again are just arbitrary ways. Are just arbitrary difficulty, and I really think that at the end of the day, the whole point of the attempt limits is to get people to want to spend more money. Now, I'm just thankful they haven't monetized it. Like, think about it. Think about if you could redo an attempt for a stone. They'd make a lot of money doing that. I don't even want to say it because I don't want them to get the idea. But alas, um, I think that's the main idea, right? But I respect Link's opinion, and I think it's a good one, right? Like, he's just saying it's annoying when people post clips of units in unrealistic scenarios. Because at the end of the day, Dokkan's a bubble popping game, but it is a strategy game. At its heart, it is a strategy game, right? Okay, so JC, we got Joshua C on Twitter. He says, personally, I have always disliked using private servers. I did use it sparingly in the past, but it honestly felt so lifeless using private servers. I just enjoy playing on the main Dokkan account, even with it being free to play and not having every new unit. So JC's just saying, listen, I use private servers, but I really disliked it. I don't get the same feeling using my main account. And I think that's respectable. And I think that's honestly a really cool, interesting opinion to have because, like someone myself, I haven't used a private server, so I can't actually comment on that myself. I can't comment on the real difference of playing it because I haven't played it. So JC's opinion is very valuable here because he's saying, listen, as someone that used private servers, even I don't like them. It kind of feels soulless, and I think that's just an opinion that makes sense. I can totally see how someone can feel that way. Absolutely. So we have a few more replies in here I want to get to. Um, we have Gruff. They're fine unless you're trying to push an agenda. So again, we have that agenda. That seems to be the main issue. People just don't like this agenda pushing. And so how do you get beyond that? How do you move past agenda pushers? How do you ignore it? And that's the difficulty. And I think that is the solution. Is I think you just have to ignore it. You just don't interact. If you see a video where someone's obviously baiting and someone's obviously showing a clip that's like either out of context or just something that just isn't quite right, just ignore it. I think you just move on. Don't give it attention, right? But Gruff says, besides the agenda pushing, private servers also have access to equips that aren't realistic to obtain. Now, listen, I can't comment too much on this. I do know, obviously, with private servers, you can mod it, but I don't think a lot of, I want to say the majority of people, I think, just play the game how it is, just free. So, I don't know. People that, I think the argument is completely lost once you mod the game. Like, obviously, if you're modding the game, you're playing a different game at that point. You absolutely are. If you're modding things in, that's a different game. It's no different than any other game you mod. But if you are just playing it one to one, just without having to spend money, you know, I think the argument then falls a little bit flat. We have Everlasting Legend Prime Battle Goku. Another character account. I love it. I love it. Right? He's saying private servers are fine unless you deliberately use custom units differently than vanilla units. Other than that, private servers are fine. So he's kind of saying what I was saying, which is that as long as you're using just the vanilla game, there's really not an issue. Not an issue. Okay, so he's thinking there's not an issue there. I think that's great. All right. I just want to say so far, I really appreciate everyone's opinions. I really appreciate how respectful everyone is, and I really appreciate that. So thank you. So then we have a couple more I'm going to go over, and then I want to go over what the AI said. That's why you see Grok up there. Grok, I asked the AI, and he had a pretty interesting reaction. So we got Gogeta. I honestly don't even care about them really, as long as they use to test out units to see their worth summoning or skipping. As long as it isn't used to prove a point or as a mainstay for how you play the game, I'm fine with it. And I honestly think this is a really common opinion. I think most people probably have this opinion, and this is probably kind of where I lay. It's like, you know what? As long as someone's just playing the game and just having fun, not spending money, just playing it one to one. Like I'm okay with that. I don't think a temp limit should exist, so like I'm cool with that. And I think that's powerful. So I think that's great. I think it's a really good point to bring up. Let's see. Let's see. I think that's La River Jix. Jix says, "I'll answer with a question that I always ask when I see it. What's the difference between all rainbow units and a private server with zero modifications? Aside from the obvious, it's not the actual game." So let's see what someone said. It doesn't bother me so frequently, I don't care. Again, a lot of people just I feel that. Like they're like, "You know what? It doesn't bother me, so I don't care." But I think that's a really good question. At the end of the day, the only difference between the real game, the official game, and the private server, if you're looking at it from a one-to-one vanilla point of view, no modding, is that someone just didn't spend money, really. And it's kind of hard to justify one over the other when the money is the only thing there because it's tough times out there, guys. It really is. It's tough times. I don't think anybody should spend money on the game. I think it's great that people do because it's what keeps the game supported, right? I love Dokkan. If I didn't spend money, if other people didn't spend money, it would go under, right? But at the same time, no one should really spend money on it because I mean, I hate to say it, but like, have you guys seen gas prices still and groceries? Like it's tough out there. So I think having a free way to play the game, I don't know. It's the Robin Hood argument, right? It's just the Robin Hood argument. And then we have Yam. So Yam, or Yam, says, in my opinion, private servers are pretty useless for people who actually like the game for what it is. It defeats the entire purpose and takes almost every aspect of the fun away. Wouldn't be able to use it for more than a single day without getting bored. Again, this kind of goes to that grinding argument, like with the way your account is, right? And that's part of the fun. And a lot of people do find that fun. A lot of people don't though. And so that's one of those things where again, I don't think there's a really a right or wrong answer in this regard because you're going to have some people like Yam who feel this and who said remember it's like grinding. um I know I just read it. Like Tapion said, right? Like he gets enjoyment out of grinding it. Yam gets enjoyment out of grinding. It's his account. But you know, as someone like me, I kind of indifferent about it, so it doesn't bother me. That's not really an issue, right? So I can totally see how someone using a private server doesn't affect them, right? It's interesting, but that's just one of those discussion points where I really don't think there's a right or wrong answer, and I don't think you can really change someone's mind either. I think that's just a feeling, and that's just a feeling they're gonna have. Okay, so really quick, I want to switch over to Grok, but before I do that, I'm going to hide my screen really quick because I want to see if I wrote to Deku, uh, but he didn't get a chance to respond yet. That's all right. I wrote to Deku to see, I wanted to get some of his opinions, but he didn't respond in time for the video. That's quite all right. I'm going to check my notifications. Um, So nothing crazy. Okay, cool. So this, I asked the AI, I asked the Grok AI. I have access to it, so I figured, let's ask. So you can see the very first thing I asked was, how much money is Akatsuki worth? To take that, listen, I'm not a finance major. I don't know exactly what that number means, so that's why I didn't go too much into it. But at the end of the day, it's a pretty big number, right? So I asked Grok, the AI. I said, Grok, what are the pros and cons of using a private server in Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle? And this is what Grok came up with. And I'm pretty sure he's probably the AI. I keep saying he, but whatever. I'm pretty sure that um it's pulling information from like Twitter, right? Or X. Like it's pulling what people said and kind of summarizing it. So Grok answered, he says, using a private server, and it's actually a pretty good answer. This is actually a really good answer. He says, using a private server in Dokkan Battle can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can offer players access to exclusive content, events, and characters that aren't available on the official servers. Well, that's worded wrong. Now, there's nothing on the private server that isn't available in the game unless you're modding it. So I think that's where the AI got a little confused. There's nothing special that you're missing out on in the private server. It can provide a fresh experience to keep the game exciting. So that I think kind of relates to the whole idea of no attempt limits. You can just keep playing; it keeps it fresh. On the other hand, using private servers can be risky as it's not officially supported by the game's developers. Absolutely true, right? This means that players might encounter bugs, glitches, or even lose their progress. That's true. If the private server goes down, you have nothing, right? If you're paying a monthly subscription, you don't get to keep the stuff when it's gone. When it goes, it goes. I mean, but you could make the same argument with Dokkan. The day Dokkan shuts down, I don't get all my money back. I lose everything, right? So that kind of is a con for both of them. Additionally, there's always a risk of getting banned from the official game servers if developers detect that you're playing on a private server. I think that's legitimate. I don't know how they would be able to, and I don't think they ever would. But if they ever did find out, who knows? Maybe. So it says, while it might be tempting to try out private servers, it's important to weigh the potential benefits and possible risks. So overall, I think it's a pretty level-headed answer. It's pretty interesting. So I was curious what the AI had to say, and that's what the AI had to say. So listen, here's the deal. We're at 50 minutes. It's a long time. It's a long, 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 long time. So I'm going to go back really quick, go back to my thread. So I just want to take this opportunity. I want to say thank you to everyone who replied to my thread. It meant a lot. This is a new type of video for me. I'm new to this. So please bear with me. I know I ended up making it quite long, but I really wanted to get through some of this discussion, and I think it's fun to have, and I think there's even more discussion to be had. I would love to have a debate with someone. I'd love to sit down and actually have a one-on-one discussion with like Truth or something and really go over this because I think at the end of the day, I think there's a lot of middle ground here. I just think that the conversations get so out of hand, they get so extra, they go up to 100, and then people just start throwing stuff at each other, and nothing gets resolved. Nothing, no agreement is made, no understanding comes to. Everyone just ends up disliking each other. So that's at the end of the day why I don't like private to server discussions. But I hope this one was different. I hope this one had some good points. I hope I was able to make it entertaining at the very least. So, you guys, leave in the comments. Let me know how you feel. Let me know if you thought my thoughts were way off track, or maybe you agree with some of what I had to say. Let me know. But at the end of the day, I appreciate every single one of you guys. Thank you. One more shout out. Tapion the God, you're one of my best buds. Archie, one of my best buds. Spider-Man Shark, you're awesome, my friend. DBC Link, JC Gruff, Everlasting Legend, Gogeta, La River Jinx, and Yam. Thank you guys. You guys are all awesome. This video wouldn't have been possible without you guys. Same with The Truth. Same with all these people here in the replies. I want to thank you, Truth. I want to thank you, Deku. Thanks for getting this conversation started. Hopefully it kind of levels out. Again, I don't want to see another huge argument. I don't want to see it get toxic. That's the last thing I need. So if there's one thing to take away from this video that I talked about, it would just be just it's okay to have discussions. It's okay to have arguments. Just keep it chill. Just keep it chill. Remember, it's just a game. And at the end of the day, we're all big fans of Dragon Ball. So, you guys, until next time, it's been Jumbo Shark 19. You all have a good one. Thank you.